Good to see you. Nice to know you're still here. Welcome to this week's vlog. This week is another get out and shoot. Dull, boring, nasty, crap, as much charisma as a wet lettuce, not very good. All of these are comments that you could associate with this place, but for me it's dark, fascinating, apocalyptic almost, full of photographic opportunity, and the perfect place to come when the weather's like this. It's a very dull morning today, and I'd imagine there's a lot of times that you guys have gone out on a weekend when you're free and the weather hasn't been up to much, and you think to yourself, what the hell am I going to shoot, because this sky and this flat light is not really conducive to sort of the big vistas and the real sort of honeypot locations, because it's flat. Okay, you can get a good shot there, you can get an interesting composition there, but the light is what was that? Don't know. The light is what brings it out. I'm not going to lie, this place scares me a little bit, so sorry about that. The light is what brings places, brings them to life. So when it's dull and overcast like this, I find it's best to either focus in on the small details or try and tell the story that it's really bleak, and it is incredibly bleak here. I'm in a local pit, by the way. I'm not going to tell you exactly where it is because it's a bit of a hotbed of crime and antisocial behaviour, so I don't want to drag anyone here sort of unnecessarily, but I'm kind of hoping that on a very, very cold weekday morning when it's sort of -1, I'm not going to get too many hoodlums about. So this is where I am, and my idea of shooting today is to capture the bleakness and like I said, the desolation and the apocalyptic nature of this place. And there's no better subject to capture that here than these burnt out cars. So I'm going to focus in on the burnt out car and I'll come back to you. Okay, so I got my first shot set up here. Unfortunately, since last time I was here, quite a few of the cars have been moved. They've all been grouped together, so that makes it quite difficult to get shots of them. But this one I've found that's on its own. And what I've done here, I've set up for a panoramic image. Now the important thing, I mentioned this before, but the important thing when setting up for a panorama is to make sure your tripod is absolutely level. And then you can level up your head and just swivel around without it going into the any sort of off axis. So get your tripod level, make sure your camera's then level on the tripod, and then you can just sweep round. And what I'm doing is I'm shooting this car sort of on the angle. Now it's on a hill, it's on a slope, it's not in the best of positions to be honest with you, but it's okay, it's on a slope. And what I'm doing is I've got the tree in the background which I'm hiding the pylon with, because I don't like the pylons, and I don't know what I'm going to do about the pylon wires. I might leave them, I might take them out, I'm not sure. And then I've got this pathway, or this dirt track that's leading up. So I've got the car which is going to be on the right hand third, this dirt track leading away which is going to be on the left hand side, and the bush in the background which is hiding the pylon. I'm shooting it at f11 and it's about a 1/10 of a second. The sky is very dull, and normally I'd leave it out to be honest with you, but because of the very bleak nature of the shot and the fact that the whole place is very monochrome really, I'm going to leave it in. I'm going to leave it in, and I'm going to, hopefully it will enhance that feeling of sort of bleakness, which I keep mentioning. So I'm going to leave that in. I'm bracketing the shot. I probably won't use the bracketing because, to be honest with you, the dynamic range on this camera is pretty good, and also Lightroom and Photoshop now do fantastic work in bringing out the dynamic range of images. So I am bracketing though, and yeah, I'm just going to take a panoramic, as I said, car on the right, dirt track on the left, tree behind, hiding the pylon, see where we go. Okay, so I've come across this car here, and it's sat sort of half in and half off this dirt track. And what I'm doing is I'm getting the camera up as high as I possibly can, because although I mentioned the sky earlier, I don't really want loads of it in because it is very, very dull and very grey. So I got the camera up as high as I can, and I'm shooting down from quite close onto the car. And then you've got this dirt track leading off to the side as well. And what my aim is I'm going to shoot a panoramic again, and what my aim is to try and get a little bit of distortion in the car, because when you get this close and you're shooting a pano, you're going to get a bit of distortion, but that's okay, because I almost want that to happen, because I want this to look and feel like an uncomfortable shot. So if the car's distorted as well as burnt out and in this environment, hopefully that should just add to the feel of unease. So yeah, that's the shot I'm taking here. I may finish now, I'm not 100% sure, but if I do, then I'll see you back at home and we'll edit one of these images. So here we are in Lightroom, and this is the shot that I was just describing to you, the final shot that I took while I was out here down in the pits, and this is the one that we're going to do some work on. So the first thing that I want to do with this actually is I want to bring it into Photoshop, and I want to address the distortion, because even though I mentioned at the time that I quite like the idea of there being some distortion, when I look at it, it just doesn't look right to me. It's warped, as you can see. It's bowed around here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it into Lightshop. I'm going to bring it into. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it into Photoshop, and I'm just going to straighten this. Well, I'm going to make it look a bit better, let's put it that way. So let's open this up in Photoshop. So here we are in Photoshop, and you may notice, or you may have noticed, that I didn't do anything to it at all in Lightroom. I didn't crop it, I didn't do any adjustments before I brought it into Photoshop, and that's because I'm going to use a Liquify tool, and I'm going to need some of this area down here probably, which is going to get dragged in. And if I'd have cropped it into where I wanted it initially, I would then have lost some of the, well, part of the image, so I would have then had to mess about trying to recreate that using content aware fill or something like that. So I'm going to go into filters here, and I'm going to go to Liquify. And here we are in Liquify. Now I want quite a big brush, and actually this should work. I haven't amended it from the last time, but actually it should work quite nicely. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this up, make the brush a bit smaller actually. I'm just going to straighten it off. It's not really straightening it off, but I'm just going to undo the perspective warp on it. And it doesn't really matter actually how it looks, because there aren't any straight lines on it anyway, because it's all burnt out. So, but that, now let's just pull it around a little bit more. Now I'm sure there are probably other ways you can do this, but I'm happy with it in Liquify because I'm not worried about keeping any straight lines, as I've mentioned. So now to me that looks a bit better, so I'm happy with that. So there we are now with a little bit of Liquify work done. I'm going to save that out and we'll head back into Lightroom. Just to show you the two side by side, this is the one that's been liquefied, if you like, and this was the original. So you can see that a little bit of work's done, but it's not hugely noticeable, but I think I just prefer it better. It just looks a bit more like the car would have done if I hadn't have taken the panoramic image. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to crop the image, and I'm not just going to crop it, but I'm also going to rotate it because I want the car to be at a more an angle which is a bit more uncomfortable for the viewer. So I'm actually going to crop out almost all of this sky, and I'm just going to pull it down like that. I think quite like that there, like that. And I just, like I say, I just want this angle to be a little bit more uncomfortable to look at. So I think I'm quite happy with it about there. Pull a bit more sky out. So let's have a look at that. So yeah, so that to me is on the tilt, and it's just a, you know, it's just a little bit more awkward and uncomfortable to look at. So now I am going to convert this to black and white eventually, and the reason I'm going to convert it to black and white is because there's an awful lot of browns and oranges, and even the grass is quite yellowy in the image, and there's not enough contrast in terms of colour for me to be able to actually get an interesting shot if I just desaturate it, or if I just were to work with it in colour. So I'm going to work with it instead in black and white, and I think that I can get a much more contrasty and interesting result. So because this isn't this, I want this to be a very contrasty, very bleak, very grimy type of look. So I don't have to go for the hyper realism. I don't have to worry about, you know, making sure that it's not too saturated or not too, you know, not too garish. I can go a bit mad with this because I want it to look grungy and grimy and that sort of style. So I'm gonna have a really good play with these sliders, and I'm going to try and make it as contrasty as I can. So I'm pulling the highlights all the way down, and I'm pulling the shadows all the way up. And the other thing I'm definitely going to do is I'm going to really push this clarity slider up, and probably the texture one as well. Maybe not quite that much, but about there. A little bit of dehaze, which should drop a bit of colour in the background, hopefully. Yeah, so I quite like that. If you look there without the dehaze, just look at this top. It's not doing anything to the bottom half of the picture, but it is just pulling some colour down in the top half of the picture there as I slide it, and I really like that. And actually, saying that I'm not going to make it, or not going to make it colour, I'm going to make it black and white, I don't mind that like that actually. So I might have a play first in colour and see where we go. I don't want to push that too much. Let's just have a little play with the black and white sliders. Now I've got my finger on the Alt key on the PC. I've shown you this before, but it gives you a representation as you slide the whites up. Where you're starting to see pixels against the black is where you're getting pure white pixels, or you're pushing it very close if they're coloured. So that's actually, I quite like that. It's really, really out there, but I don't mind it. And start to pull down the blacks, and the blacks are already there really. I don't want to lose any detail, really, too much detail in the blacks. Actually, let's have a look at it in black and white. So I like the black and white, but I'm actually quite taken with that colour, and I didn't think I was going to be. So let's just desaturate it down a bit. So drop in the vibrance, or actually let's leave the vibrance and pull the saturation down a bit. Maybe just drop the vibrance and push the saturation up a touch. Do we want to have a play with the colour temperature with the white balance? Let's have a look. Yeah, quite like that. That's not too bad. I've just pulled it back a little bit. One thing I do want to do is I want to use an adjustment brush here, and I just want to drop the highlights and the whites a little bit down on this roof because they're quite strong. Not too much. Just a bit. Maybe if I drop the clarity, that should, yeah, that helps it a little bit. Got to be careful. I don't want to go too mad on that, but Yeah, that's just pulled it down a little bit from where it was before. So if I drop back to where that was initially, quite stark the colour there, and afterwards it's just toned it down a little bit. It's just so you're not being drawn too much to the roof there. So normally I would add a vignette here, but because I actually this is the top area is quite dark already. What I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to use the brush tool and just brush a little bit of contrast and drop the shadows around on this bottom bit, just to give the appearance of a vignette without actually darkening the top any further. So just going to paint down here and around. It's a bit subtle there, so I'll maybe drop the highlights a touch. Maybe drop the exposure, see what that does. Nothing too much. And I'm probably just gonna get rid of a little bit of that. So actually I quite like that. After saying that I wasn't going to go for colour, I actually quite like the colour, but I do think, looking at it again, it is still just a little bit too much. So I'm just going to desaturate it down a little bit more, somewhere around about there. So I've dropped the vibrance down, and I'm going to use the brush tool again, and I'm going to paint in some, I'm going to try and recover some of the shadows in here by painting them in a little bit with the brush tool, just a little bit, because I don't want it to be too dark down in there. Let's see how far we can bring that up. A little tiny bit of dehaze there, kind of just helping out as well. So that's just brought in the detail that you can, if I click into here, you can see the detail a lot better now, whereas previously you couldn't. So let's have a look. This is before and after the adjustment. You can just see that detail a little bit better in there now. So actually I think I'm about done with it, to be honest with you. And I've surprised myself because I wasn't expecting to have this colour at all. I was expecting to go black and white, something like that perhaps. But I actually really like that colour, and I think that's quite interesting, and it does add to the image. So yeah, so that's my final shot there, and I hope you like it.